So I was born in Manila, Tondo, Manila in the Philippines. Also considered to be like a third world slum, really filled with poverty and crime. So I grew up there and just kind of didn't know any other situations. And so to me, that was kind of home. And then eventually at the age of 11, I immigrated, my family and I immigrated to the Bay Area, started off in San Francisco, and then eventually we landed and stayed in Oakland, California. Culturally wise, the Bay Area and the Philippines similarity, we all love pop culture, you know, and I think in the Philippines, that's what I was kind of into. Didn't know much about Filipino martial arts. I didn't know Filipino martial arts existed. So getting out here, immigrating, and just kind of trying to blend in and assimilate as a teenager or as a youth got me exposed to like hip hop culture and all of other mainstream things happening at the time. So the Philippines was like all like interested in American culture because it's westernized and it's also a colonized country. In terms of differences, a lot, I think one is resources. There's a lot more resources for people out here, and it's a lot more challenging for folks in the Philippines. Well, you know, I got exposed to a few martial arts, you know, growing up in the Bay. Capoeira, took some classes from some friends of mine who was also instructors. And I learned from some friends on some Wing Chun Taekwondo, but nothing that I like truly immersed myself until I met my instructor, and that's when I was like, oh, I found something. And this is the time where I didn't even know there was Filipino martial arts that existed, especially being a Filipino in the Philippines. I just kind of like to assimilate and wanted to be part of the culture here. And as a youth, you know, you got exposed to other martial arts that's not Filipino, right? So whether it's Chinese, Japanese martial arts, or having icons like Bruce Lee, or then eventually Tito Dan and Santo. But in the beginning, no real exposure. Then the media, took some classes, but I kind of really truly immersed myself into and soaked myself into this arts once I found out about it. Probably around 18 or 19. I was introduced to it by meeting a gentleman. He was living on the streets at the moment, but he was a Filipino gentleman. And I was a teenager working at a local bagel shop at a college town in Berkeley, California. And we were working, my good friend Greg, who's also an instructor in the system, was out there. We were taking a little break. He was wearing his Filipino shirt. And so this gentleman came by and was like, oh, you Filipino? I'm Filipino too. Do you know about Filipino martial arts? And we were like, what? Filipino martial arts, you know? We didn't know he was unhoused at the time. So he was like, you know, we'll trade. You know, how about I'll teach you some FMA and help me out. And so we would bring him bagels and, you know, we would like take things from the store because we were, you know, we were broke ourselves just working, but at the same time we were interested. So we were like, let's do this. Let's fund our FMA with these bagels, you know? So we got to meet him, Mario, who was studying under our instructor, Maestro Sonny, at the time. And then he brought us in and then introduced us to the art, and then eventually introduced us to Sonny. And that's when like everything else kind of fell off the side, you know. I was still kind of nerding out, like, oh, Filipino martial arts. So, and I think the internet was alive then, so I started researching it and Googling it and like got into it more. But at the same time, I was like, why is this shit so underground and I did not know about it? We got to meet with him and it was just like, stars just kind of aligned, and we met him and we just started training with him since '97, you know, until he passed away in 2006, 2007. I think the first impressions that Maestro Santiago may have had when he first met us was like, oh, these fucking kids, right? Because it's not a commercial school, he's teaching out of his home. You know, I'm expected to go like meet the master, and I'm thinking I'm gonna like go to a, you know, like a Taekwondo school type thing with glass windows with mirrors across. And I came in, I was like, we're knocking at a door in an apartment complex in Alameda, and as soon as the door opens, slowly it's like cigarette smoke coming out, and it's in a dark background. It's like him peeping out, like, "What's up, Mario?" You know, like, "Ooh, what's going on?" You know, like that was the first impression. You know, like, and I was like, "This is the martial arts school." You know, this is the maestro. So I mean, that was my impression, but I didn't know at the time. But there was also some relationships between Sonny and Mario that they were kind of working out, and we were kind of like the sacrificial virgin to be like, "Hey, I'm caretaking the art, and here are my students, and I want to present them to you." And they really seems to be passionate about learning the system. And we came in, and he was like, "All right, come in, let's see what you got," you know. And then he just had us flow in front of him. We didn't even train the first day. He was just sitting on the table watching us, talking to Mario, smoking a cigarette. Like, "Who are these guys? Where'd you find them?" You know, it's like filtering us through Mario, making sure that he didn't bring a bunch of a-hole kids into his home. Yeah, and then we didn't even come back for hella long until Mario disappeared, and he kind of went away for a minute. Then we were like, all right, me and Greg looked at each other, like, let's go. Let's go. I hope we don't get decapitated without coming with Mario. So we went without him, and we're just knocking. Sonny came out, I was like, "Where's Mario?" And we're like, "We didn't know, we thought you knew." And then that's when he was like, "All right, well, come on in." And he like, "Come on Sundays," when he didn't have no other students. So we were like his project a little bit, until later he seen him taking it serious, and he invited us in other days where his other students was there. But Sundays were just us for, I want to say, maybe about the first or second year.
No, I didn't.
They created another one.
Yeah, at the time we just kind of Visayan style. Didn't know that there was like hella other styles, you know? So it's like, and then eventually, you know, VSCK. And then I was like, what is CORTO KADENA? What is LARGO MANO? I know LARGO because it's long, and I know MANO because it's hand from Spanish. And I was breaking them down by name. And I know CORTO is short, KADENA is chain, but I really didn't understand the full meaning until I actually got soaked into the system. Like, oh, this is a short chain flow that integrates the long range. It covers the range and the distances, and it's fluid and perpetual motion. You know, I had my own own understanding to it, and then I started hearing my peers in the system, and they started speaking the similar language. So now it's like, okay, I think I'm starting to understand it. And then as I got seasoned into the art and been in it more, then I started to understand more about the name. You know, we didn't have a first day in class, and it's like, let me break down the name of the system. You know, it was just like, come here, let me see flow. So that was it, straight into it. So not a lot of the cultural and educational we got as we were going along. He gave us foundations. That's what I was tripping about a little bit. You know, it wasn't really focusing much on the granular aspects of a technique. You know, it was like principles, foundations, fight strategy, game development in terms of how to play. And then majority of it was flow based, and like timing, range, distance, controlling the space, understanding the space. Yeah, I feel like it was really high level stuff, but didn't know even what high level meant until I got older and started seeing how other systems functioned, or how other processes of the curve of learning their systems, right? We were like, throw you in the fire right away, and then let me see how you react. And in terms of, was he hard on us? I think in the beginning, he wanted to make sure that we weren't effing the art around. And I think part of the reason he asked some students to leave is if he kind of gained that type of understanding about someone's persona. You know, if you're that kind of type of dude who's like using the art and teaching other people, and your students are kicking down garbage cans and a nuisance to the community, then he would be like, nah, this ain't for you, and you're not for the space. So I think in the beginning it was a little bit, you know, he would be a little bit harder on us, put a little bit more pressure, and then he eased up as he saw us a little bit more dedicated to the art. However, Sonny has a good gauge of judging people based on their play and their game, you know, and their flow. And if he sees you starting to get aggressive, he'll sit your ass down. You know, he's like the coach of a basketball team. In his own gentleman-like and very humble, modest way, he'll put you to the side. And sometimes you won't come back in for that day. Or sometimes me as a teen could be a little bit loudmouth, having too much fun, and he'll be like, you're in my home. You're not in a martial arts school. You know, or he didn't say that, like that's the projection, you know? It's like, and you gotta learn how to like dial down and have sensitivity around how you project yourself, which is one of the other things that I learned being a martial artist under him. And I think that's one skill a martial artist always start to develop, whether they know it consciously or not. It's like, how do you read body language? Or how do you read the personas and stuff like that? So he actually, from what I heard, he actually appreciated some of the lightness that came that when I come in or when me and Greg came in, because all his students are all like damn near killers or something. You know, you got folks that are coming from, that are masters of other schools or systems that are traveling from around the world to come see him. And his local students were like either special ranger or special ops cat or retired military or 20-year plus martial artists, really like seasoned veterans in the game. And sometimes it kind of like parts of the martial arts is like there's hella, you know, seriousness. We kind of brought an energy of like lightness, and I think that was appreciated, but sometimes, you know, you gotta learn how to dial it down.
We have the long, the medium, and the short. A lot of FMA system focuses on one of each.
You know, I heard about Sonny evolving in different parts of his life, and so we caught them towards the end part. We were like the third generation students. What I started to realize what makes VSCK different from other systems is it wasn't a lot of rigid drilling around techniques. It was like movement and flow based. And sometimes flow could also be misinterpreted as like, oh, you guys are just moving and dancing and non-combative and just trying to escape and run. Well, a lot of the skills that I feel that one might need in a sword engagement or a blade engagement is deception and evasion and escaping. You know, being able to execute what you need to do, defend yourself and cut the other person, but being able to also have a really smart fight strategy to be able to exit. So that stood out right away, and the movement stood out right away. I mean, there's other FMA systems that has footwork and movement, but here it was like the vessel. Here it was like, it was the platform. You know, yeah, you could have a cool technique, you could have flashy twirls, you could do that, but can you pull it off in the time? Can you actually judge distance, space, timing, and having all these variables going on as you're about to execute the technique? So there's these things that you have to do, and you have to be in a flow state at the same time having consciousness of all of these other things that you need to apply while you're in flow. So I think that right there stood out right away. And then some of the other contributions he had with his sword game and his double stick game and his long range game, it was a lot different from all of the other systems that I saw. And then it was like randomness and then a little bit of improvisation. That to me was very liberating, a lot of freedom. And some people learn by, you know, I need to memorize a sentence, or I need to memorize a technique, and that's their learning process. But there's another learning process, is by experience. You get thrown into something, and that for me was like intriguing, because then I get to have a certain liberation and freedom, and then if I don't push it off, I see the mistakes right away. And then so you have to adjust on the fly. And then because of the pendulum and the flow, then you get this automatic reps in. You get all this reps in. And it's keeping a metronome, keeping a timing. I think that's super valuable, because then you start to understand rhythm and timing. And I think that's even more important than like the granular aspects that you could then focus on later. But I love the idea of like come and flow, but then intentionality. You're not just kind of moving around all the time. Like there's intention in everything, in your evasion, in your blocking, in your attack. Everything has intention. So I think in the early beginning, I didn't know much. I was just like, oh, this is really cool. But then as I grew in and became more seasoned, I was like, whoa, this is actually so simple, but at the same time, very complicated. But then once you get into it and you understand it, man, you want to exercise it all the time. You want to just, and it feels so good being able to exercise that, those both sides of the brain, at the same time being able to pull in techniques based on the time and space continuum. Yeah, I think his being a teacher and as a person is very similar. He's very quiet, modest, humble dude, and he's like a hermit. He goes out as a, dancing, but at the daytime, again, he lived on his own. He didn't have a commercial school, so he was like always constantly researching, whether it's his martial art, whether he's refining some woodwork, that he's designing things with a sculptor. He was a musician. He was playing music on his keyboard, on his bass. He had an 8-track recorder. He was recording his stuff. And he was also like really ahead of the game with like recording VHS, all of our classes. That was our curriculum, It's like everybody get to leave with a VHS tape, He's like, you better study that stuff. And he'll know when you come back and you didn't practice, because he'll see your movement. So that's his teaching style. As a person, he's very inquisitive. And every time he has students come in, whether they're Special Marine Corps or they're a security guard at the bar, he'll talk to them, he'll listen, and then he'll be like, so what's happening? And then he'll help troubleshoot some of the challenges they were having. And usually he doesn't like to talk a lot. He's just like very direct, straight to the point, and he might jokingly come at you, very deceiving, like, was he making fun of me or was he complimenting me? You know what I mean? And sometimes you don't know, and sometimes it's both. And he doesn't like the limelight too much, and I think part of the reason he got popularity was when he got to meet Jesse Glover, Bruce Lee's first student, and saw him, and it's like, there's even a quote out there in the internet world that he said, Sonny moves just like Bruce, but with weapons in his hand. And that's straight out of Jesse Glover, and so that's really validating for a non-high profile martial artist like Sonny. But when Jesse saw him, like, yo, you come with me and you're gonna tour with me. And that's what made Sonny really popular in the martial arts community, especially with the diehards. So not mainstream like Bruce Lee, but popular in the community. So that was like, that's who he was, but he doesn't like the limelight. Sometimes he'll ask us to do a seminar for him. And a lot more, especially when he was getting sick towards the end, he's cool with where he's at, and I think that's really one thing amazing for me as a young man growing up, that you don't have to be really braggadocious and arrogant when you're doing martial arts like a lot of folks can be. Not everybody, a lot of martial artists I know is very humble and sweet and nice, but how martial arts is projected in the community, it's hey, there's a lot of people that still think that martial arts is toxic, because it's like you're teaching people how to fight or how to be an arrogant prick or whatnot, where actually it's the opposite. And having been exposed to Sonny in that way made me want to be chill, especially in my persona, who's like also kind of loud and outgoing. Being humble and being modest eventually can bring you to in front of the right people, instead of like you searching it out.
Isa, full strike, go all the way to your hip, 45 degree. See how it's like a...
I was probably 5 years into the system. And I was also in the community, Filipino American community in the Bay Area, and we were also utilizing performance arts as one of the ways to educate our community. So I was being involved in community and also having an educator background. Have the martial arts was just was another tool for me to help educate about my culture. So I just kind of use it as a leverage point to be able to bring more information and education to young people I was working with, whether they were Filipino or not. And then I also realized that because I was working with young people and helping them develop as leaders, that you could use the martial arts to help develop people, not just their fighting skill, but their leadership and who they are as a human being. So then I was like, yo, let me use it as a great tool for that, and I got to promote the culture, and my colleagues saw that, whether it's the principal at the school, and I was then eventually got to bring swords to school and teach them, because my leaders at the moment started trusting what I was doing with it. And then I wasn't making a lot of money from it. I was making no money from it because I was using it as a tool in the job that I was in. But then eventually I realized the value that it had as an educator that was developing and as working with young people. And I was like, hey, this is actually a good way to help out people. So that's what kind of kept me going. And then eventually I did get some gigs for it, like teaching at a Filipino cultural camp, a language and ecology cultural camp, and or teaching at the local community centers. Then I was like, oh, I could get paid for this for part-time, you know, help out with some bills. So it was different entities that aligned. And then when Sonny passed away, and again as a teenager, I was one of the only students that was not paying. Right? I realized, like, damn, I'm not even paying this guy not 1 cent. I would bring food for him. I would bring him stuff. But I was like still kind of broke, and I was still a youngster, so I couldn't put up a consistent monthly income to my teacher. And he was very humble, living in not very stylish, luxurious lifestyle. I started feeling bad. So internally, I was a young man. I was like, my way of paying this man back is I'm gonna spread his art. I'm gonna spread the culture, and I'm gonna spread his name. We checked in with what our passion is, what our passions are, and then we checked in. And it wasn't just youth that I realized, it was also adults that also needed some help, whether it's martial arts, but also kind of like a community or a mentor, you know? And I was like, hey, maybe I'm not a perfect human being. I got a lot of things I need to work on, but maybe I could be there for somebody that I can help them develop. I'm not a gift to be your leader, you know, not at all. I want to be there to be an ally to you and help you get to the place where you want. And if this tool can help you get there, or if your relationship with me can help you get there, let's help you. But don't put me on a pedestal, because I'm looking to my teacher and my ancestor now as my guide. Just see me as a guide, cool, but don't put any extra, you know, sugar on it. It's already too much politics in martial arts in general, especially in the Filipino martial arts specifically, you know. So yeah, I just wanted to bring some balance into the community, and I felt like maybe this is our niche. Those other guys, the tactical guys who wants to decapitate, maybe they can go to another teacher. And if they feel like they have value, they can find value with here, cool, but this is how we run it. We want to be allies to our community members. We want to be there for support. So we would just want to balance it out and make it a little bit more accessible and inclusive. Then we're lifting it together, you know, and I want to be on that side of the game to help uplift everybody. So some of my future goals with the art, man, I think I'm just happy to be a student. Like I said, just being able to play. But there is some feelings of obligation. There is some feelings of really being more aggressive or assertive in promoting the culture and the martial arts. I'm super blessed and thankful for the opportunity to travel and teach it. And I feel like there's so much value in other people that wants it because they either want it for the martial aspect, but they want it even for the flow aspect, or for the fact there's movement, or the fact that there is like, that we're trying to make it more inclusive. So I feel like those are valuable to me. So even though I'm okay being a student and staying at my little space and community, I feel like it's okay also. And hopefully if there's a demand for it from the community, like the seminars that I've recently done here in Michigan, or in Austin, or going to Barcelona or Geneva, it's like people request me. And I like that. I don't have to push it on people's throat. But I am present on social media, and I guess part of that is promoting it that way as well. So I want to promote it, not just because of Sonny, obviously, but I feel like there is a value. Like when people understand the pendulum more and they integrate it regardless of what system, it's valuable for their system. Yo, use it. And I think that way we uplift FMA as a whole, you know? And me and my colleagues and peers, we have a conversation. It's like, you know, comparing it to other martial arts systems where Taekwondo or Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, you know, where it's like out there in public in the community, and they're streamlined, it's uniform across systems, you know? And you know, it's part of our culture as Filipinos. There's 7,000 islands. I got your style, I got my style, bro. That's how we do it. So also being okay to embrace all of that and trying to find that middle part. So I just say, let's just share it, and whoever wants it, they can consume it. And if whoever wants to dig in deeper into it, then they can seek out us, and not just me. There's other instructors, a few other instructors. There's Greg, there's Maya, who's out there all in public. But we also have some underground fighters that are down to teach it that are not in public. So if you want pieces of that, we welcome folks to come in and learn it. But for me, I think I'm gonna just die with knowing the art and sharing the art, whether it's with the youth or whether it's people members that want it, because it brings so much value in my life. I feel like it brings value in other people's life. So share the art, and there's some other detailed dreams that I might have. I still wanna go surf, but I like to create communities of martial arts, of VSCK martial arts group, and maybe even in the future create a brick and mortar academy where they're also not just learning the art, but they're also learning different things in the Filipino culture, and then kind of making them more well-rounded, whether it's VSCK or parallel to VSCK and running with VSCK together. But I definitely want to create a space for folks that want to learn more. I like to grow the system. I like to grow the art. I like to grow Sonny's contribution and show the world why this dude is so special and unique, and he passed away at an early age. And then that way, we're keeping the culture going in regards to raising our ancestors, and then utilizing the knowledge that we were given from our ancestors and helping raise the future generations. Because we're so flow-based, maybe to the untrained eye or to a lot of people, they might think it's, hey, it's just dancing around. And, similar to the Filipino martial arts, similar to capoeira, in terms of how it was used for resistance against oppressors, that you hide the martial arts. A lot of that similar story and narrative also in the Filipino martial arts. So in ours, because we're so flow-based and everybody's like, why are you guys not decapitating heads all the time, like maybe some systems do. And I think part of it is they might not understand that the flow is actually equally valuable than the techniques that you're mastering. And that this art has a really rich, combative, or the dark side is what Sonny would say. Sonny would say the art has a light side and it has a dark side. And let's focus in more on the light. But don't forget, there is the dark. So making sure that living a life that's balanced, but at the same time, understanding that this art is not just dancing. There is a dark side to it. And we don't wanna have to implement that. But if we have to, we will. And that is something that I wanna share when people are taking a look at the art from the outside.